Fox News alert for you now. President Trump just moments ago arriving in Kansas City, Missouri, ahead of his speech to speak at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention. This is the White House has sparked a lot of attention over the suggestion that President Trump may revoke the security clearances of 6 former top intelligence officials who worked under President Obama and have been fiercely critical of President Trump. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Milissa Francis. Here today, Fox Business Network's Dagan McDowell, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, former deputy spokesperson at the State Department, Fox News analyst, host of Benson and Harf. Boy, Marie, your title has gotten long. That's Marie Harf. And joining us on the couch today is David Webb. He is host of the David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot and a Fox News contributor. And he is outnumbered. Boy, this is going to be a fiery couch today. I can feel it already.
Get ready.
And
Marie and David next to each other.
Uh-oh. Marie looks locked and loaded. David, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
I'm outnumbered, but never outgunned.
I love it. All right. So as we await the president's speech to the VFW, here is new reaction as the White House looks at stripping security clearances of the 6 former top national security officials. Former FBI Director James Comey, former DNI James Clapper, former CIA Director John Brennan, and former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and former CIA Director Michael Hayden. Criticism from these former officials and others has escalated in the aftermath of the president's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Last week, Brennan calling the president's behavior, quote, nothing short of treasonous. Now the White House says it's looking into whether these officials should maintain the security clearances that they were granted during their time in previous administrations. Watch.
The president is exploring these mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases actually monetized their public service and their security clearances, and making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate. The president contends that the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
Republican Senator Rand Paul called on the president to revoke Brennan's security clearance and says he'd go a step further and remove top secret clearances from all retired CIA agents and officers. Watch.
John Brennan leaked information that almost cost the life of a double agent. This is 4 years ago now. He should have been fired for that, but he wasn't fired by President Obama because I think he was a partisan. But now he's a talking head on the outside saying that basically President Trump should be executed. That's what we do for treason. And so, yeah, I'm very concerned about him having privileges because of his past history.
But Democrats warning that the president's move would set a dangerous precedent.
This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship. And we were able to avoid that for such a long time. And now the president is what? I mean, does this rise to the level of abuse of power? I want to see what some of the people he's taking it away from don't even have it. So does he even know what he's talking about?
Yeah, nobody's partisan in that group. And earlier, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan weighing in, saying he doesn't take the threat to revoke security clearances very seriously.
I think he's trolling people, honestly. This is something that's in the purview of the executive branch. I think some of these people have already lost their clearances. Some people keep their clearances. That's something that the executive branch deals with. It's not really in our purview.
Trolling them. Now, normally I would go first to our one lucky guy, but I'm going to go to Marie Harf because she's the only person sitting on the couch, I believe, who's had a security clearance. So I'm going to defer to you. How meaningful is this, or is he just trolling?
Well, I do think he's trolling, and none of the criticisms that these former officials have made publicly appear to be based on classified information. They've all said that. I would also point out that Mike Hayden didn't work for Barack Obama. He worked for George W. Bush. He didn't continue serving. He left when Bush left. But the broader picture here is there are reasons that the top intelligence officials, once they leave, keep their clearances. And in part, that's to help their successors if they need someone to call who has dealt with issues before. When I worked at the CIA for 3 CIA directors, they would call their predecessors all the time. They're the only ones who've been in that job, and they would turn to them for guidance. Same when I worked for the Secretary of State. So I don't like the idea of stripping these clearances away for political reasons because you're being criticized publicly. And quite frankly, if they strip them away, I don't think it will change a single thing that any of these people are saying publicly because it's not based on that.
I want to point out what's going on the screen here so that people at home just tuning in. The president is arriving in Kansas City at the International Airport right now. He is getting ready to make a big speech to the veteran of foreign wars at their United States National Convention that's coming up. That's why we're looking at it on the screen. And, you know, this is pertinent, David, because you got to think some of these topics are going to come up when he gets out there in front of the crowd. And he tends to go off prompter in these situations. And I feel like he may do that today. What do you think?
So I'm going to give a little HT to Paul Ryan because he's in part right. But let's look at the issue of security clearances. First of all, once you've left your post, whatever it is, you can be read out of the program. I've had a lower level clearance, and when I was done with what I was doing, I was taken out of that. That is how it should work. I know former CIA directors, Jim Woolsey comes to mind, and others that I've known for many years. And while at that level I could see a validity to it, when you go to the point of becoming political or monetizing it, then it's a question of trust. Will you use your access to provide whether some false impression of more validity to your statements, as Brennan has done? The questions about Brennan for many years, for many of my friends, goes back long before Trump. The questions about Clapper go back long before Trump. These are guys who have had questions because they're politicos. And frankly, to the American people out there, once you're done with your job, you're done with your job. Whether you're a congressman, a senior official, you're read out of this. And hang on, you can be read back in when needed if you're at that level. So you don't need to keep it.
I mean, they both have valid points here. Marie makes a great point about wanting to talk to the people before you. In terms of monetizing it, I mean, what we're really talking about is that if you're going out and giving a speech or you're writing a book or you're a commentator on another channel, it raises your cachet. If you still have a security clearance, you're able to charge more. I don't think they're saying you're going to go in and, you know, say, I will sell you this information I still have access to. It's the idea that you're still in the loop, isn't it?
Well, and the concern that Senator Rand Paul brought up on Martha's show last night is that if you have people who are still involved in receiving this kind of information, not through a briefing with a Trump administration official, but by talking to people that they still know who are working inside an agency, there is a high risk because they were actively engaging in media and going on to do interviews that they will accidentally reveal classified information because they aren't clear in the moment about whether it was classified, whether it wasn't classified. So he did bring that up. From the White House perspective, if you look at the requirements on the state.gov website about what you have to do to get a security clearance, you have to have loyalty to the United States, obviously be able to handle classified information, but trustworthiness, honesty, reliability, discretion, and sound judgment are also requirements. And the White House would argue that based on some of the things that John Brennan has said and the things that James Comey has said about telling, you know, people to vote for Democrats, they're going beyond the issue of just talking about intelligence and offering a debate about foreign policy and using, you know, their position with a security clearance to then fight against what the administration is.
Let Dagan get in. We'll come right back to you, Marie. Go ahead.
Well, I want to quote just the headline on the Wall Street Journal editorial on this today. Dumb idea of the week. Revoking clearances is petty, and here's a better idea. Their idea is to find out the person who leaked in early 2017 that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had been wiretapped by U.S. intelligence as he talked with the Russian ambassadors to the United States because he was clearly unmasked in spy parlance by Obama officials, and we deserve to know who was behind that great injustice. That being said, that this removing people's security clearances is merely an act of political retribution. And the Wall Street Journal says
trolling.
The Wall Street Journal says, who's sitting at the table go, yeah, we'll show them, because it's not going to shut them up. They're still going to have John Brennan on TV.
Can you speak to that second point that they're making, though, about Michael Flynn? And do we want to know who it was that leaked that he had been wiretapped?
Well, the point, actually, I was going to bring up is about Michael Flynn. And it's that after he left the Defense Intelligence Agency, he joined a partisan campaign. He gave partisan speeches where he was wading deeply into politics, advocating for someone to get elected. And he still, as the former head of an intelligence agency, would have had the same kind of clearance.
So he shouldn't have had it. None of them should.
I think they all should, actually. So I'm just saying it's interesting that when he was being partisan, that Trump people didn't seem to care. But yes, I think there are questions about who leaked this kind of information about the ongoing investigations, who put some of this information out there. I'm sure there are leak investigations ongoing. From what I've seen about unmasking that was done in the Obama administration, I have not seen evidence that people were unmasked for inappropriate partisan reasons. I know there's a lot of accusations, but the intelligence community that I worked in takes unmasking very seriously. These are not partisans who make these decisions. And as someone at the White House can ask, the intelligence community is very capable of saying no if it's inappropriate, and they didn't.
I was surprised to know that people continued their security clearance. Like you say, why didn't people yell about Michael Flynn?
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, the way that you talk about what he did, and he was out there. I mean, I saw some of his speeches. Absolutely. If these people still have clearance, that is shocking.
But I'll add that. But
it's a courtesy.
I just want to. But I think the American people, that the reaction online has been on Twitter, for example, all morning long. Wait a minute. You just get to keep this.
Right.
This is a blanket perk. Right. It's a gimme to anybody in this job. I understand if you're the former head of the CIA, maybe. But when you're John Brennan, he has essentially taken credit for launching the investigation into the Trump campaign.
Well, he was
I think that I think that it is up to the executive branch that if you're in a position and you're calling the president's actions treasonous, and you're acknowledging that you were egging on the FBI's probe into this campaign, that it's the president's right.
Same level, all those people on that list, right? I mean, we have one person on there who said that the president is treasonous, which is punishable by death, and then you have other people on that list that are just contributors at other networks.
And don't have their security clearance anymore because, again, James Comey's friend said he was read out, and Andy McCabe also no longer has his clearance.
What Dagan just said is important with reading out. Once you're read out of a program, you're also given parameters.
What does that mean, read out of a program?
You're read into a program which can take months. If you want to have a TSSCI clearance or as high as an SAP clearance, which is the highest. Once you're read out, you're given parameters on what you can and can't say. That comes to the accountability for what you do publicly. And the trust with a clearance is beyond just what you have in your position. It's what you do with it, or the specter or perception when you leave.
I'm going to let Katie get the last word. I just want to tell people what you're looking at on the screen. That's the stage there where we are expecting the president to step up and speak very soon. We're keeping a close eye on that. We're going to bring it to you as soon as it happens. Katie, give me the final word on this.
Michael Flynn made thousands of dollars to travel to Russia and sit at the table with Vladimir Putin for an RT event. So there is a little bit of a double standard when it comes to the outrage. But overall, there is a problem with security clearance backlog. The security clearance program actually needs to be reformed. And Senator Mark Warner, who is a Democrat, actually wrote about this earlier this year. So if we want to take on security clearances from a political perspective, that's one thing. But overall, there actually is a very serious problem with the way that security clearances are pushed through, transferred. It costs lots of money for them to do it. Then there's the question about who gets to keep them and who doesn't.
There are more than 4 million people right now walking around in the United States with security clearances.
And there's a 700,000 person backlog for people who have applied to get them who cannot.
And there are multiples of that number laughing at Nancy Pelosi for saying that the last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship.
Right, we were chuckling when that line went by.
Able to avoid that for so long. That's hypocrisy for the day.
Perfect button. Thank you. All right. New word. The president's tough approach to on-spots. North Korea may be paying off. What new satellite images show. And the war of words between the U.S. and Iran intensifying, the latest from that rogue nation, and why the latest standoff may be part of a broader White House strategy. Fox News alert. We are awaiting remarks from President Trump at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention that is in Kansas City, Missouri. That's what's right there on your screen, and it's going to start any minute now. The appearance comes on the heels of the Senate's bipartisan confirmation of Robert Wilkie as the new Secretary of Veteran Affairs just yesterday. The president is expected to talk about ways to improve the VA and his strategy to fight terror abroad. We are going to, of course, bring that to you live just as soon as it happens. And the president tweeted tweeting this as he landed in Kansas City. Quote, I am very concerned that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election based on the fact that no president has ever been tougher on Russia than me. They will be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump. Did you like that read? I do it with dramatic influence.
It was really good. It's not all caps today, though.
That's true.
It was good, though.
That's true. Katie, what's your take on that one?
Subtle? Very subtle.
Subtle.
I have no idea where he's going with that, as you were saying. Look, the Russians' goal is not necessarily to elect one party or the other. It's to get us fighting with each other, which they've been very successful.
They were awesome at that
for the past 2 years. Yes. So, I think he's just throwing that out there to say, look, I'm concerned about Russian meddling, and by the way, they want to elect Democrats because I have a strong record on Russia. So
however, there's a record here in the current record. If you look at the number of sanctions, not what the tweeting or what the claims are, you go down the checklist. Access to banking for certain individuals and institutions. You go to various people that have been sanctioned, diplomats that have been kicked out. You go to other sanctions that have a secondary effect on Russia. The Trump administration has actually done a significant amount of work. The problem is we can't get out of this collusion argument in the public. And like Trey Gowdy just said to Adam Schiff in response to him, where is the evidence, essentially, paraphrasing? He's seen no evidence.
Well, and Democrats only started caring about Russia when Donald Trump won the election. They didn't care about, like, the Obama administration ignored what they were doing. They ignored the intelligence. They made fun of Mitt Romney.
The 80s just called, they want your policy back.
The whole media complex made fun of Mitt Romney for even bringing it up as a threat. So it's interesting now that they all of a sudden care about it.
What we got from President Obama, remember, after it was revealed that the Russians were trying to interfere in the election, he looked at Vladimir Putin as in a sideline meeting and said, cut it out. So that's what we got. That's what we got.
To be fair, and I think Marie can speak to this point.
From Obama.
To be fair, the president keeps getting in his own way on this. I mean, talking about trolling, he himself gets trolled by the fact that one day he says, the Russians interfered. The next day he didn't because he's conflating the charges of collusion and meddling and feels like that's meant to undermine his presidency. So wait, let her respond. Go ahead,
Here's the challenge, though. The sanctions that were passed overwhelmingly by Congress, Donald Trump did not want to sign, and he is not fully implemented because he does not want to put them in place. There are multiple reports that he did not want to expel that many diplomats. So what Putin sees is an administration taking tough steps, as David mentioned, but it's also a president they see that talks really tough with all of our allies and won't apply the same pressure to Russia. So Putin gets the thought from Trump. And look, Donald Trump said it.
Or it's good cop, bad cop.
Donald Trump said it in the interview with Tucker Carlson last week. Donald Trump basically said, why would we go to war over Montenegro? That cuts so fundamentally at the heart of why NATO's around, and that is music to Putin's ears. So I don't think Putin thinks Donald Trump is going to expend U.S. resources for Latvia or for Montenegro, or if Russia pushes further into Ukraine.
To your point, I want to highlight this, that all Russia wants to do is disrupt the United States of America and create an uproar and destroy any unity that might still exist. And I'll point to two things. There was a Microsoft executive at the Aspen Security Forum earlier this week who said that Russia has tried to already hack 3 congressional candidates during the midterm election season. I don't think they revealed the candidates' names or the parties involved. Wall Street Journal today that the Homeland Security officials have said Russian hackers reached U.S. utility control rooms. Blackouts could have been caused after networks of trusted vendors were easily penetrated. That's what they're up to. They want to destroy the United States, and we need to have a much more united front on this.
Do you think the president has a strategy in place to counter that? Because we've heard reports that he doesn't.
The Pentagon is now in charge.
Well, they did roll out a strategy last week.
Well, they moved Cyber Command under the Pentagon into an active command about 2 months ago, number one. Number two, the utilities hacking has been going on for some time, and it does need to be countered because 1/3 of Russia's GDP is based on energy, and going after our energy sector helps them stay strong. And they're not just trying to Dagan's 100% right, but it's other countries that they want to do this to at the same time.
Go ahead.
We have this Fox News alert. New signs that President Trump's push toward a nuclear-free North Korea may be bearing fruit. A U.S. research group that monitors the rogue nation saying satellite images show that North has begun dismantling its main missile engine test site. The group calling this an important first step toward fulfilling a commitment made by Kim Jong-un. Word of this coming the same day that President Trump knocked down reports that he wasn't happy with North Korea's progress. The president tweeting yesterday this, quote, "A rocket has not been launched by North Korea in 9 months. Likewise, no nuclear test. Japan is happy. All of Asia is happy. But the fake news is saying, without ever asking me, always anonymous sources, that I am angry because it is not going fast enough. Wrong. Very happy." Katie, I want to get
Does
your...
Does he sound very happy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure you read that with the right inflection on the very happy. Anyway. Very happy.
I know. We're going to practice reading Trump.
No, it wasn't angry. Very happy.
Yeah.
We need a Trump tweet mood translator.
We do.
Emoji time.
With a color-coded option.
Like a mood ring.
Yes.
Exactly. But Katie, I want to go to you first on this. General Jack Keane was on the Fox Business Network this morning on Mornings with Maria, and he said this is obviously a step in the right direction. But we need to know the key denominator is to have the location and identity of all nuclear and ballistic missile sites. Go out and verify what is there, that they are there. That would be progress. We don't yet know what has been given over to
we don't
US.
know what they have, first of all. This is enormous progress. This is great news that they're at least taking some steps, but we don't have inspectors there on the ground. We don't have independent inspectors. We don't have UN inspectors there. So this is great progress, and I'm glad that we're seeing this moving forward, and it's good for the president to be able to say that he's gotten results from this summit that he had, which was a very high-stakes thing for him to do, going into that after being criticized for being too tough on Kim Jong-un. Then he got criticized for meeting with Kim Jong-un. Here we are now with them moving things around, but until, as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the administration have said, until there is verifiable denuclearization permanently, which means we are going to have to go in and inspect the entire country, quite frankly, then we'll see if there are real results that are long-lasting.
But, David, I'll point out that it wasn't long ago, it was just a matter of weeks ago, that there were news satellite photos that showed that the Kim Jong-un regime is continuing to develop the nuclear weapons program. We've had China essentially allowing loosening its enforcement on the trade sanctions after the summit. So there's been a lot that's been going in the wrong direction since that summit.
Yeah, and for anyone who expected that immediately Kim Jong-un was going to turn the tables on this program, it's his biggest leverage point, also his leverage point with China, not just with the United States and the world, was not going to happen. It also takes time to put these resources in place. They've developed a plan in the administration that is a multi-year plan in this approach, and it involves using other elements of national power, putting together with the denuclearization. Also, they don't have the equipment and the ability in some cases to tear these facilities apart. The farce in the tunnels that were exploded for the media was that they could be reopened in the way the explosions were done. We now know this. So, you know, instead of instant reaction and instant gratification, let's let the process play out. Mike Pompeo is well aware of it. He has the background of intelligence, which is key as former CIA director, and the administration has developed a plan that is a multi-year plan.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask Marie, you know, we saw at the UN, I think it was last week, when Nikki Haley was standing with Mike Pompeo, and they were basically blasting China and Russia and saying, hey, look, you guys are doing ship-to-ship petroleum transfer, and you're getting refined fuel into North Korea. That's no good. We have to keep the pressure up. Is that the right move?
I think it's one of the right moves, certainly, because we do not see other countries, particularly China, cracking down as much as we want them to. But we also have a fundamental question that hasn't been answered yet by the North Koreans. Are they really serious about complete and verifiable denuclearization? We don't know that yet. And taking this step, if it's confirmed by inspectors on the ground to destroy this facility, we need to get inspectors in there and actually see what happened. I think that would be a good start. And if that happened, that is a good start. But fundamentally, we still have heard reports that Pompeo's and State Department meetings with the North Koreans have sort of flatlined.
Totally.
And that they're just sort of taking messages back to Pyongyang and not really negotiating over the nuts and bolts of denuclearization. There's still very much an open question if there is a real sort of mega deal to be made here, or if we're just going to keep tinkering around the edges.
But if they said we're committed to total denuclearization, we still wouldn't believe them.
And they've
it doesn't matter what they say.
Well, they've said it 6 times before.
Yeah,
so what
it
we
doesn't
need
matter
now
what
are
they say.
concrete actions. And
Yes,
so far
actions.
on the nuclear side, We haven't seen
concrete
action.
On the issue of non-nuclear, they won't even give us our remains back, which is a basic starting point.
And by the way, this is not linear.
That's right.
An important part of this strategy, it's not a linear strategy. First you do this, then we do that. Denuclearization is also right there with stability in the beginning, which is what Kim Jong-un wants. He wants stability for his regime. Other elements of this come together.
Yeah, a timeline would have helped, though. If we had a timeline to work off of, that would have helped a great deal to say,
can't establish one with them.
Well, we sure didn't, did we? And now we've got a lot of talk and not enough walk. Melissa.
Yeah, this is your read. Your read.
President, no, I know. Melissa always says that. Yeah. President Trump, meantime, is expected to speak at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention in Kansas City, Missouri, momentarily. We will bring you that live as soon as it begins. And could we see President Trump sit down with special counsel Robert Mueller soon? An attorney for the president says it is possible under some conditions. We have the details next.
Never before has it been more important.
Fox News Alert, we are awaiting remarks from President Trump at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention, which is in Kansas City, Missouri. That's going to happen any moment. The head of the group saying he hopes to hear more regarding the ongoing U.S. negotiations with North Korea on the returns of the remains of Americans who were prisoners of war or missing in action during the Korean War. We are going to bring you the president's address live just as soon as it happens.
Meantime, President Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani at it again, reportedly saying the president would agree to an interview with special counsel Robert Mueller if the questions were focused on allegations of Russian collusion and not on obstruction of justice. Giuliani is reportedly concerned Mueller might believe witnesses who contradicted President Trump's account of events, like the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. That could open the president up to a potential perjury charge. Giuliani telling the Wall Street Journal, quote, "We think the obstruction of it is handled by Article 2 of the Constitution, the provision giving the president the authority to appoint and dismiss members of his administration." So, Dagan, Rudy Giuliani it seems like Rudy Giuliani is really focused on negotiating publicly for terms of a private interview, and I think that's a press strategy. But in terms of a legal strategy, do you think that they have any say in what an interview might look like if one happens?
I will always go back to quoting Judge Andrew Napolitano, one of my favorite people walking on planet Earth, that you do not let your client sit down for an interview. 4 out of the 5 guilty pleas that special counsel Mueller has extracted are related to lying to investigators or lying to the FBI. It is a felony, and this is how they get you time and time again. We go back to Martha Stewart and the like, and you never know what they know. You never know what the investigators have uncovered, and they will intentionally ask you questions that trap you, that lead you down a dangerous road, and you will never have a full sense of where they're going. And by the way, they're allowed to lie to you, but you're not allowed to lie to them. And I just can't imagine that Rudy Giuliani, as smart as he is, would ever let President Trump sit down for an interview.
Well, Melissa, do you think there may not be a choice, right? The president may eventually have to sit down, either politically or legally, with Bob Mueller. If he doesn't at this point, there's going to be a lot of unanswered questions. And people say, wait a second, if you have nothing to hide, like you say you don't, maybe you should sit down.
Well, I think a lot of people know in their own mind that if they had a choice to go or not, they would not go, no matter what. Yeah. I mean, I would try desperately not to go, and I can't think of anything on the spot that I'm guilty of. I was surprised to hear Tom Dupree earlier today, former Assistant Attorney General, say that he thought this was a fair offer. But I don't think it's really a sincere offer. I mean, I think it's out there, Rudy Giuliani's out there talking.
I think it's more of a press strategy. Yeah. Let's face it, for anybody who wants to figure it out, see Dagan's answer. Because any lawyer in any situation will tell you, you don't sit down with someone who owns a grand jury for that very purpose in the last part of the statement. They're allowed to lie to you. You can be in trouble for lying to them, or at least the appearance. There's also the next step. Mueller needs to prove his worth, which means that even if he didn't get anything on the president, he can write a memo that says, I recommend impeachment, send it to Congress. And that just starts the whole politics of this over again. And I don't think Trump should worry about the politics and focus
I think
on
Mueller
the election.
has proven his worth. He already has a number of guilty pleas and dozens of indictments.
But none of them related to Russia collusion.
Some are related to Russia.
Wait, can
Which ones?
Katie?
I'll let Katie get in here, but I'll point one thing out about Michael Flynn's guilty plea, that Jim Comey told people in Congress that the FBI agents who interviewed Flynn didn't think he was lying, and he wound up pleading to something. I'm just asking the question.
Flynn was also fired for lying,
right?
To Mike.
But I'm saying that they can trap you that way.
Sure.
Katie, what do you think about this? And look, if the president just tells the truth, shouldn't that be enough?
Well, I think it's a lot more complicated than that. As Dagan was saying, there's a lot that we don't know. I find Paul Manafort's upcoming trial really interesting. I think we're going to find out a lot about Democrat lobbyists in Washington, D.C., like Tony Podesta, that we didn't know about before. I think that Mueller's going after more people than we actually know about. There's been rumors of special treatment that he's been giving to Democrats rather than Republicans. But for the president, publicly, they've actually been very successful over the last year of turning public opinion against the Mueller probe. People think it's politically motivated. Public polling shows that people don't actually care about the Russia issue anymore. They think that whatever outcome Robert Mueller comes to, it will be tainted with politics. There's been enough information now about the lawyers who are on the special counsel that people feel like it is a political witch hunt. So publicly, they've certainly been able to win on that. Legally, we'll see if the president is forced to sit down. They've also been arguing constitutionally that the president may not have an obligation.
The plenary powers of the president and what he has the right to do.
There's still a lot to go through here, but I'm sure Rudy Giuliani knows that he should not have the president sit down voluntarily, because that could lead to all kinds of other problems.
I think Rudy's floating this.
This is far from over. We will keep watching it.
Very true.
We are also watching because we are awaiting President Trump in Kansas City, Missouri, where he will give remarks at the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Convention. We'll go there live once he begins, so stay tuned. Plus, a junior senator going against some top Democrats as she now calls for her party to make abolishing ICE a top priority should they take Congress back. Are some Democrats losing touch with average Americans? We'll debate next. Stay tuned.
When we flip the House and flip the Senate, I think we should get rid of ICE.